What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Life Advice with Hunter. This is the show where I sit down and read questions from viewers just like you and give you some advice on whatever is going on in your life. And also, happy Thanksgiving to all of my American viewers, which is most of you, but I know some of you are in the great land of Canada and beyond. But anyways, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to submit your own questions for these videos, you can do so by going down into the description, finding the Google form link, finding our Discord link, sending it through the comments, or finding me on social media. Whatever works for you, there's multiple ways to send in your guys' questions. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's read today's question. How do I deal with family during the holidays? I live in a family that I disagree with on pretty much everything, but I do find it hard to cope and stay quiet during the holiday. How do you deal with it, and do you recommend how do I deal with it? All right, yeah, man, it's a good one. Obviously Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming up. And this is a tough time for a lot of people. So, I don't think that you should feel bad about not, getting along or whatever. It can be a challenge. It really can. And for me, sometimes it can be a challenge, right? I don't agree with my family on everything. And I especially don't get along with a lot of them. Not because they're bad people, not necessarily, but I have very much different things that I do in my life, right? I record a podcast 3 days a week and I work in radio, all right? Most of my family on my dad's side dropped out of high school or got a high school diploma, and that's about it, right? And I've talked about that before in the past. And sometimes it can be a challenge, right? But I think that the best piece of advice that I can give you is to keep your head down, right? And the reason why I say that is because there are a lot of people that will be quick to jump in and want to change people's opinions. And I'm mainly talking about political stuff, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because it sounds like it might be political stuff for you, right? And you say you have a hard time staying quiet and all that stuff. And I get it, but you're not going to change people's minds. You're really not. And I'm something that's relatively political, right? I study journalism, and my beat is politics. If you don't know what beat is, it's basically what do you report on. So politics is my thing. So I follow a lot of politics. And I just stay quiet because, I don't agree with everybody. And everybody's never going to agree with you. And you're never... and the thing that I've learned about recent culture and debate culture and all this stuff is that you're not going to change people's minds. And that's something I very much believe in, right? There's a lot of times where you're going to want to argue and bicker with somebody and be like, no, you're wrong, you're this, whatever. Dude, people don't want their opinions changed. They really fucking don't. And the last place where it's going to happen is at the Thanksgiving dinner table. It's not the setting to talk about it. And I know that a lot of the times your relatives, especially if they're older, boomers, will bring it up on their own, okay? And I get that sucks, but just ignore it, I'm just able to fucking ignore it, And I literally study politics for a living. And I can ignore it, all right? And I don't think that you should feel bad about being distant or not really talking that much, right? Because the truth of the matter is that that's better than getting in a fight. And thankfully I've never really had that. I've never had a giant argument at Thanksgiving like a lot of people describe. I've never had that. And part of the reason why is because we just don't talk about that stuff. It's not a discussion for the dinner table, right? And if somebody does bring it up, just let them talk about it. Fucking ignore it. And if somebody else wants to fight about it with them, let them fight about it. Don't be the person that fights about it, because what's the point? The point of the holidays is to be together and be with family. And of course, you're always going to have disagreements with family. But just because you guys disagree doesn't mean that I think that you should just completely argue with them at the table. I just, and I also don't think that you should have to feel ashamed if you need to step out, just step out too. That's a strat that I use sometimes too. I do it in a lot of social situations where if let's say we're sitting inside, I'll just step outside for some fresh air, right? And it is an amazing feeling to just be able to stand outside and literally just take in your environment, taking the sun, taking the snow, whatever Thanksgiving is going to be like this year. Well, whatever feeling you're feeling is completely normal to feel, but what's not normal is to lash out at people, right? There's no point to it. And I think too, especially with people that you don't always agree with, is that I've always stood by this, and I think that it's something that we lost, with Generation Z and stuff like that, is that there is nearly almost always something that you can talk to somebody about. And I genuinely mean that. And the reason why I say that is because even if I disagree, or not even disagree, sorry, I'm not even on that point. if I, a lot of my family, especially on my dad's side, we don't have a lot of interests that we share, right? I'm a nerd that enjoys video games, politics, and movies and TV, right? Those are kind of my main interests. You can almost always find something that somebody likes, right? And I mean this genuinely, all right? Like, a lot of times, like when I'm with family, especially on that side of the family, I'll just talk about movies or TV, even if it's shows or movies that I don't really like, I'm able to talk about it because that is something that's a skill that you're going to need to learn to adapt. There are going to be times in your life where you're going to be in professional situations, family situations, where you're going to be surrounded with people that don't necessarily follow your interests. And that's totally fine. And there's plenty of things that you can talk about with people. You just got to be cautious and weary and figure out what they like and then talk about that, right? I familiarize myself with a lot of different things so that I can talk about it, right? Pretty much the only exception to that rule is fucking cars because I just don't care, right? But like literally everything else I can basically talk about, like whether if it's science, history, literally anything you throw a topic at me, I can talk about it for a couple minutes at least. That's all you really need to do for Thanksgiving especially. You don't need to have these hour-long discussions with people. There's probably 15 other people there. And that's the thing. Is it also works if you can just find one person that you get along semi-well, stick to that person if that's what you really want, man. Like, I don't think that you need to overthink it and be like, oh, I need to be involved and talk to every little person. And I mean this for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And, literally, like Christmas, bro, let me tell you what my Christmas looks like with my family for me, all right? I'm a relatively quiet guy, so I'm usually pretty quiet, and I'm enjoying some nice eggnog, all right? That's my vibe, all right? And if I want to talk to somebody, I talk to somebody. But you shouldn't feel like you need to force yourself to talk to people when you necessarily don't need to. And of course you should say hi to people, but you don't need to talk people's ear off. You don't need to have this groundbreaking discussion that's going to change the future, all right? You don't need to have that. And I'm going to be honest here and say this too, that I think that a lot of people kind of forget too. Just because they're blood doesn't make them family. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid to, if you need to, don't celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas with them. That's something that I believe in, Of course, I celebrate it with my family. I love my family. My family is great. That, I genuinely think that, my family is amazing. I love my family. I love everybody in my family. On both sides of my family, everybody's amazing, okay? For the most part, like I said, we get along pretty well, But the point of the matter is that, sometimes I think that people are afraid to step away from their family. And the worst that happens is that they don't talk to you. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how else to say it, but I don't think that you need to be afraid to step away from a family. I really don't. And I think that more and more people are realizing that. And you also need to realize it, my friend. And so I know that today is a little shorter, but I don't have too much to say, to be honest. And it's also Thanksgiving. So go spend time with your family, catch up with your relatives. If you're coming back from college like me, you got a lot of great stuff to talk about because let me tell you, I haven't been able to visit because I've been so fucking busy. But anyways, guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching. And as always, if you want to submit your own questions for these videos, you can do so by finding the Google form link in the description, or you can find a Discord link, or you can submit a question via the comments, or you can also find me on social media, whatever works for you. But anyways, guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.